When I talk about the limitations of the URS, the Uniform Rapid Suspension System, I almost always say that it has a very high burden of proof and very strict filing requirements. So, in addition to its limited remedy of getting a domain name suspended rather than transferred, it's usually not a good option for trademark owners. And a recent URS case that Warner Brothers lost makes this perfectly clear. Hi, it's Doug Eisenberg, and the case I'm talking about here was filed by Warner Brothers Entertainment, which owns Hanna-Barbera Productions, and it involves an unusual domain name, Scooby-Doo.xyz. Now, Warner Brothers has filed and won plenty of domain name disputes through the years, involving a wide variety of well-known brands such as Harry Potter, Batman, Tweety Bird, Seinfeld, TMZ, and more. So it's clearly a sophisticated trademark owner. According to the URS decision in this case, Warner Brothers Hanna-Barbera subsidiary owns the Scooby-Doo trademark, which it said has been in use since at least 1969 in connection with broadcasting, media, and entertainment services. I grew up watching Scooby-Doo cartoons on Saturday mornings with Casey Kasem of American Top 40 fame as the voice of Shaggy, and my kids certainly know the Scooby-Doo characters too. Encyclopedia Britannica even says the series achieved great success, and the program's formula lent itself to seemingly endless variations that remain popular more than 50 years later. Now, the URS decision refers to only one registration for the Scooby-Doo trademark, but I easily found 20 registrations for the mark just here in the United States, and it looks like the character's name is protected by hundreds and perhaps thousands of trademark registrations around the world. The domain name that Warner Brothers was pursuing in this URS case, Scooby-Doo.xyz, was just registered in August 2021, and the registrant's identity is protected by a privacy service. And here's a screenshot of how the domain name was being used, at least as I found it shortly after the URS decision was issued. The site uses what appears to me to be an obvious copy of the Scooby-Doo character, although I'll admit that I'm a bit confused about what exactly the site is promoting. It says Scoo-B&B-Doo is the highest paying dividend reward token, and that it aims to be the greatest reflection coin in existence. I think the reference to B&B in the domain name is probably the common abbreviation for Binance coin, so at the very least it seems that the domain name and website are associated with a cryptocurrency related operation. So the URS case involves a very well-established trademark associated with a children's cartoon character that was being used by an unknown registrant in connection with a cryptocurrency website. At first glance, that might sound like a slam dunk case for a domain name dispute, but that's not at all the way it turned out. And the case is a good warning for trademark owners of all sizes. Now, Warner Brothers could have filed a complaint under the UDRP, the Uniform Domain Name Dispute Resolution Policy, for Scoo-B&B-Doo.xyz, but for some reason, it chose to file a URS complaint instead. The decision, of course, doesn't say anything about why Warner Brothers chose this option, but in my experience, trademark owners usually prefer the URS, which, by the way, does not apply to .com domain names, because it is much less expensive than the UDRP. But that cost savings should never be the only consideration. Like the UDRP, the URS includes a three-part test that a trademark owner has to satisfy. But unlike the UDRP, the URS says that it was designed only for clear cases of trademark abuse. As a result, the URS requires trademark owners to establish their cases with clear and convincing evidence. That's a very high burden of proof, and they have only 500 words to do so. I know when I file URS complaints for my clients, I often find myself cutting out every unnecessary word to meet the strict requirement, which doesn't allow much room at all for factual explanations or legal arguments. By comparison, a typical UDRP complaint, on the other hand, may allow up to 5,000 words, so the difference is obviously significant. Perhaps because of this limitation, Warner Brothers apparently didn't say much in its URS complaint, which ultimately proved fatal to its effort. After quickly finding that Warner Brothers had established rights in the Scooby-Doo trademark and that the scoob-do.xyz domain name was confusingly similar to it under the first element of the URS, the expert turned to the second element, whether the registrant of the domain name had any rights or legitimate interest in it. And here's what the decision says on that part of the test. Under the URS, the complainant is held to a high standard of proof of clear and convincing evidence. Contrary to the UDRP, the URS is a unique process to be used in the most blatant domain name cybersquatting with a short 500 words limit for the complaint. The complainant must, within the limits of the URS, explain each of the three elements necessary to be satisfied under the URS. In the present case, complainant failed to provide any explanation why registrant has no legitimate right or interest to the disputed domain name. Failing to completely argue the second element, the complainant failed to meet the necessary requirements of the second element. In other words, simply asserting that a domain name registrant lacks rights or legitimate interests without providing any factual or legal explanation is insufficient. Now, maybe Warner Brothers thought that it was obvious, or maybe Warner Brothers had already reached the 500-word limit in other parts of its complaint. But whatever the reason, as this decision makes clear, conclusory allegations alone are insufficient under the URS. Now, near the end of the decision in this case, the URS examiner reminds Warner Brothers that the outcome of a URS proceeding is without prejudice to other actions, such as filing a complaint in court or under the UDRP. So eventually, Warner Brothers may be successful, but its effort under the URS clearly was not. And the outcome in this case is exactly why I often advise my clients against filing URS complaints in the first place. They're difficult to win, and the time and effort and money are usually better spent on the UDRP. If you want to learn more about the URS and the UDRP, please check out my masterclass on domain name disputes, as well as other resources on my GigaLaw website. And be sure to subscribe to the GigaLaw YouTube channel to be notified of future videos discussing other internet legal issues. Thanks for watching, and see you next time online.